Welcome to Payroll Setup Lesson number 14 on setting up worker classes. I'm in the Payroll Center screen and I'm going to click the class button on the toolbar to set up worker classes. I have some examples of what classes are, so we'll talk about those first and then I'll show you how to set one up. Basically, classes are different groups of workers that you have in your organization. They can be your clerical workers inside, your officers, they can be field workers. The number of classes that you have to set up really depends on, first of all, if you're union or non-union. That's the biggest differential. Plus also the different types of workers that you have out there. If you're a non-union company, then you don't really have to set up a lot of different classes. You may want to set up an office class, a main office class, clerical workers, and field workers. That's all you would really need to do, is have 3 different classes. But if you're a union contractor, I would recommend setting up classes that represent your individual union codes. And the reason for that is later on, when the union has changes to pay rates and deductions and to benefits, you can change them in the class, and that will also allow you to just change everything automatically to all the workers set up within that class. So you don't have to go into the individual workers and change their pay rates, change their deductions, change their benefit amounts. So classes have different functions depending on if you're union or non-union. Let's take a look at a class that's already set up in here. I'm going to double click on the 110 foreman class that was set up in here, and attached to it, I'm going to go into these different tabs to show you how things have been attached to that particular class. Now what happened here was when we set up the class, we can come into the pay rates tab then, and then attach to the class the individual pay rates related to that class. So for example, because this is a 110 foreman, we attach the 110 foreman pay rate, and if there's a vacation pay rate too, right there, to that class by checking them and clicking the add button. Then they were automatically added to the class pay rates. Now what we can do in here, if necessary, is we can change the pay rates for this class of worker. Now if you've already set up your pay rates with your current hourly rates, then you don't have to do this. But let's say next year when your rates change, you can change them in here, and when you save them, it will change it for everybody set up with that worker class, which is really cool. Now because the pay rates already had the taxes, liabilities, and deductions attached to them, when we go into the taxes tab and we click the class taxes tab, you can see that those taxes were automatically set up with the class. So you don't have to do anything in here. They're already set up with the class because they were originally attached to the pay rates. Same thing with the liabilities. By selecting originally the pay rate for the class, we've also automatically selected all of the liabilities for the class, which includes union benefits, as you see here, and your other tax liabilities like your FUTA, your SUTA, and your 2 employer matches on the FICAs. So that's why we originally attached all of the union benefits, taxes, liabilities to the specific pay rates to shorten time here. Because indeed, when you set up an employee later on as a 110 foreman, all this stuff will automatically be set up with that employee, so there's very little customizing you'll have to do on the employee basis. It's the same thing with deductions, guys. If you click into the deductions tab, you can see all of the company's deductions, but you will see, if you click into the class deductions, all the ones that were attached to this particular class because they were originally attached to the pay rate that they're related to. So there's very little customizing that you need to do, if any, at this point. But you can, if you double click on any record in the class deductions or any of these class tabs, you can customize them per class at this point, and thereby being able to change them company-wide for all employees within that class, which is really cool. You can also attach benefits directly to the class. So if you wanted this IRA percentage to be added to the class, you can do that by putting a check mark here and clicking the add button, but I'm not going to do that. So I don't have any benefits in here, which is fine. Remember, deductions, liabilities, benefits can be added directly to employees that have them as well. But because I'm concentrating so much on union setup, trying to simplify it for you, I may have failed to mention that deductions or any of these benefits or anything can be attached directly to employees. So please remember that. That would be cool. Now if I go in the time off tab, there's my vacation one, so I'm just going to put a check mark in there saying, yeah, it's active for this class of workers. So let's go back and add a new one. I'm going to go back to the General tab, and I'm going to click New here for a new class. It's going to be active, and I'm going to add one for the 110 Apprentice 1 workers. And I'm just going to go 110 APP1 as a short abbreviation for the class, and I'm going to also relate it to its union code, and there it is right there. Now the geo code isn't something that everybody uses, but you can set up the class relating it to a geo code, and the geo codes really are set up on the job side that can relate back to the worker class for reporting reasons. But as I press enter here, I'm prompted to save the class, so I'm going to do that, and right away it opens up the pay rates tab. But tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to click back into the General tab, and I'm going to double click on the class that I just saved so that it appears in the General tab. Then I know for sure that this is the class I'm working on. Then when I click into pay rates, what I'm going to do from the company pay rates is I'm going to select all the pay rates that are related to the 110 Apprentice ones. So in this case, it's just this one. So after I've checked all of the corresponding pay rates for the class, I click the Add button, and you are then notified that it's add the pay rates to the class. And in doing so, it's added it into this Class Pay Rates tab, where I can then customize or change the rates for this particular class. But because the 110 Apprentice 1 pay rate also had taxes and liabilities and deductions attached to it originally when we set it up on the main screen, those carried over to the classes. So as I click into the taxes tab, I can see that the taxes that are then added to this class of workers. Same thing with liabilities. Now I can see all of the Apprentice 110 liabilities attached to the class itself. Same thing with deductions. And if I wanted to add more deductions or taxes or liabilities to this particular pay rate, I can just go back into the company one and say, well, I want the credit union deduction to be added to this pay rate, therefore I won't have to add it to each individual employee. It'll be attached to the class, then the employee set up with the class will automatically have it set up with them. So I'm going to do that. So by adding it, there it appears under the class deductions. So whether you want to customize anything at this level or customize it at the employee level, it's up to you totally. So that's how we add classes. And you're going to like these when you begin setting up your workers, because it really pares down the time it takes to set up workers, especially if you have a union payroll. And everything's all organized for you here too. This ends the lesson on setting up worker classes.